Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mindy Hunthrop, and we are excited that you decided to spend your lunch break with us today for one of our Lunch and Learn webinars. So to kick us off, just as a reminder, many of you already know, but these webinars are presented by 3 online degrees that we have here in the College of Engineering at the University of Arkansas. The one I work primarily with is the Master of Science in Operations Management, but you see some information about these programs on your screen now. So to introduce to you today's presenter, Leonard Nethercutt started teaching for the MSOM program in 1997 as an adjunct instructor, and he's now a full-time instructor for our program. He has experience in several closely held entrepreneurial ventures, including management and tax consulting services, multi-state retail operations in partnership with major oil companies, wholesale petroleum distribution, and software development. In these roles, he was responsible for strategy development, budget control, and systems development, as well as financial performance. He also has experience as an NASD licensed investment advisor representative, and then his volunteer service includes work with a nonprofit finance committee, the Rocky Gap Water Project, and Connect Faulkner County. In 2014, he was recognized as the MSOM Faculty Member of the Year. And so with that, I am happy to introduce to you our instructor, Leonard Nethercutt.
Thank you, Mindy. I also would like to welcome everybody and thank them for attending this webinar session. I hope you can take away a couple of morsels or tidbits of information that you can utilize in your work. So what I'd like to do is to jump right in and get started with the session. My motivation, I heard last year, we actually, Mindy develops these webinar series and the individual sessions somewhat in advance. Instructors commit, and about that time there was a announcement, a result that Apple achieved. It was the first U.S. corporation, U.S.-based corporation to achieve $1 trillion in market capitalization. My guess is that everybody is aware of that, and they realize that this is a substantial achievement for Apple. Now, first thing I want to do is to lay some groundwork, and that is what does market capitalization mean? And market capitalization means it's calculated as the number of shares outstanding times the common share price. Now, I don't want you to think this is an investment session, because it's not. We will use this as a framework or understanding about how value is created through methods or techniques within the organization. So market cap, common shares outstanding, times share price. And investors' valuation is forward-looking. They look at cash flows that are expected to occur in the future. So essentially what happens is investors look at the present value of future cash flows. And I've, just for the fun of it there, put the market capitalization formula that calculates. And you'll notice in this particular, if an investor were to use this, they would be interested in future cash flows. Again, it's forward looking, and then they would take those and discount them by their required rate of return. That's 1 plus R, and we raise that to the n. In other words, we have to discount those future cash flows back to the current time. And that would provide us with the market price or market capitalization for Apple. So when you think about Apple, well, at least when I think about Apple, I think about a couple of things, and that includes the products that they make, things like the iPhone, Apple Watch, Apple TV, iPad families, kind of go down the list, Mac computers, iPod. So they have a pretty diverse or broad product family. They also services. There's some software apps. I think iTunes, maybe streaming video, and some other things. So they've been able to achieve this market capitalization through the operations, the ongoing operations of these particular products. Now, there is one other thing I'd like for you to briefly take note of, and that is, why are we interested in these market capitalization and these common stockholders? And the reason for that is that the common stockholders are considered the owners. And when managers make decisions, they should make decisions that are in the best interest of those owners. This decision making, or I call it a behavioral assumption, is that managers should make decisions that maximize shareholder wealth. So let's get to looking at the processes that are in place within the organization that can lead to the creation of market capitalization, shareholder wealth, I'm going to say. And these, what I call value creation drivers, they include strategic management, project management, and operations management. So combined, they're all necessary, must work effectively for value creation. Being said, as I look at this, I think, well, you can use this approach. I'm going to go so far as to say every organization uses some form of this approach for decision making and deciding which products to produce, and as well as other strategic and strategically important decisions, but they don't always lead to value creation. I have some results a little bit later we'll take a look at. Some are good, some not so good. And one of the basics of this process to create shareholder wealth or value creation is price selection. And we're going to briefly look at that from a strategic as well as a financial evaluation perspective. Specifically, we're going to look at the time value of money approach. And then we're going to take just a minute or two to connect NPV to value creation, results, and performance. I have several examples, both good and some not so good, and then we'll end this session up and we'll go to work. All right, so let's go and look at this model of value creation. Again, can't emphasize enough that strategic management provides goals, directions, initiatives. This is part of the strategy formulation component of strategic management. And then strategy is implemented through projects. That's part of the strategy implementation part of strategic management. And then projects impact operations management through ongoing operations that result in sales and cost. We produce an item, well, we also produce revenue. We do sell that item, so OM impacts both sales and cost. And these lead to profitability and related cash flow, which impact value of an organization. So I just restated, and I'll just read this to you. It's not my tendency to read all slides, but I will for this one. Strategic management provides decisions, initiatives to achieve mission along with strategic goals. Project management provides action to deliver the strategic initiatives for use by operations management. Operation management provides value realization or creation through the ongoing production of goods and services, where value is ultimately measured by firm value from the eyes of the corporate owners, which are the common stockholders. Now, I will mention that this process, while I'm primarily focused, I'm going to talk about results that are reflected in stock prices, common stock prices. This approach is also relevant to entities or enterprises that are nonprofit or governmental. what you will typically see is they also use a very similar approach. They use strategic management, project management, and operations management as well. So I don't want you to go away thinking that there's no value in this approach if you work in a non-for-profit organization. All right, so a graphic from the project management body of knowledge shows the relationship between strategy as well, and from strategy follows decisions to make certain investments, strategic actions, and those actions then are completed or implemented through projects. The projects then are turned over to operations, and then operations uses the deliverable, the result of those project efforts to create goods and services. And sometimes these objectives or these actions or decisions, strategic decisions, can be associated with new products, development of new products, the extension of products, new models. Think about the iPhone there. It seems like they have a new model out about every 3 to 4 months, and that drives sales for the company and profit and cash flows. The project management, it serves as a bridge, so to speak, between strategy and operations management. All right, so the components, I'm not going to get in depth into strategic management. I'm going to cover the major components so I can lay some groundwork so we can look at project selection through the lens of strategic management as well as through financial evaluation. So the components of strategic management include strategy, formulation, implementation, evaluation. You probably heard me mention at least 2 of those previously, and there was a quote here which I showed as an undetermined source because I have it written down somewhere, but I don't have the source. A widely accepted comprehensive model of the strategic management process. This is the point I wanted to convey. This model does not guarantee success, even though I'm comfortable in saying that every company uses some shape or form of this approach, but it does represent a clear and practical approach for formulating, implementing, and evaluating strategies. Now, strategy can take on many forms or strategic decisions. And this slide comes from Dr. Chili. He is part of the MS EM faculty, Engineering Management, and this is from his Introduction to Engineering Management class. And he talks about steering an enterprise toward increasing profitability. There's several approaches that an enterprise can use. These would be strategic alternatives. They can innovate to create a new market, innovate to increase size of existing market, increase the share of the existing market. They can reduce cost, and there are other alternatives as well. I like this description simply because when I hear the word steer, it implies a couple of things, and that is that we have a destination. Okay, and in strategic management, we have a place we'd like to be. We have a destination. It may be 5 years from now, but we have identified that destination, and we need to get there, which that means we need to steer our efforts so that we can accomplish that strategic goal or objective. So this means it's intentional, an intentional process. I'll use the reference to steering actions here as I move through these slides. I will make one other quick point, and this comes from Cheryl Sandberg, Facebook Chief Operating Officer, sometime, well, it was last year. The backdrop went along the lines of Facebook. Some apps or parties that they were doing business with had shared user information, and they were under fire for this. So this came from her statement, and it says, "We never run this company for short-term gains. We've never run this company to maximize profits. We run this company for the long-term health of our community." So a couple of things come out of this. Regardless of the strategic action chosen, regardless of which steering knob that we choose to use, the focus is on long-term results, not short-term results. We should make decisions, take actions that produce long-term results. And in the long run, we want to maximize value, not maximize profit. Maximize profit is more of a short-term goal, and sometimes when you choose to pursue a profit maximization goal, it may actually cause consequences that affect the long-run value of a company. A couple of examples that I've heard recently, and one is the company name is VALE. Now, me being from Little Rock, Central Arkansas, I'd call that Vail, but I was listening to a financial news, and it is a Portuguese name, is what I understand, and it's actually Vale. So that being said, Vale is a mining company, and they had a operation somewhere in South America, and part of the mining operation is they have some wastewater, and they store it in retention ponds. Well, they had a pond dam break, and these are pretty massive storage facilities, and there was considerable destruction, loss of life due to the release of these damaged, or the wastewater. So when the investigation started, or it showed that the company or an individual in the company or individuals had decided to not build the dam to specifications, so they had practiced what I refer to as cost minimization, but they did it at the expense of a longer term impact. And needless to say, the company is now involved in legal litigation, and you can actually look at the stock price and see that value has been destroyed by this short-term orientation. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about project selection. To me, this is one of the most important decisions you can make. And there's two primary considerations. Well, I'm going to present this as two primary considerations, but you may find that there are other considerations. There may be some social considerations as well. There may be some brand image considerations as well. But two primary considerations include: we will choose projects because only if they support our strategy, all right, will they help us achieve our strategic goals and objectives, and do they provide a required financial return? And one approach, one method that we can use to measure whether a project will provide the required financial return is net present value. Net present value looks at the value created by a project or a strategic alternative. The approach, when you look at the, it's really quite simple calculation, but the inputs that go into it may take quite a bit of work. we have recently, in my finance class a night or two ago, we looked at how to find cash flows, annual cash flows associated with the project. So the inputs to the net present value calculation, let's see if I can get my pencil to work, what's the chance? We need cash flow for each year, and we also need a discount rate. In other words, what is the required rate of return on this particular investment? And we also need to know the initial outlay. So we have cash flows over the life of the, could be a piece of equipment, could be a new product, could be a product extension. So we need to estimate all those cash flows, and that can be a significant undertaking. We also need a required rate of return. We have opportunity cost involved in our investing, and we need to specify this. I have a tendency, I call it a discount rate. So the first term, if you look at this becomes the present value of future cash flows, and from that we subtract the initial outlays. This is another way to say, well, and when we discount this present value values all these cash flows at what's referred to as time zero, because the initial outlay occurs at time zero. So this becomes the value of those future cash flows. This initial outlay becomes how much do we have to pay to receive those cash flows. So if net present value is greater than zero, then we will meet the required financial return. Now, that being said, does this guarantee that this project, this investment, this undertaking will generate a net present value? The answer is, well, one of my, occasionally have students in my class, when I ask them questions like that, they say, it depends. And that's actually the perfect answer. And what does it depend on? These are all what? Estimates, okay? Future estimates. Is it possible that we have forecasted precisely the amount of cash flows associated with a new product over the product's lifespan in year 5? The chances are not. As I would say, it's slim and none. Chance of a precise estimate that actually happens is zero. It could happen, but it's very unlikely. And we also need the discount rate. My insight into discount rate, corporations are using investors' money, capital, and those investors require a rate of return. Depending upon the type of investor, whether it's a debt or bond investor or common stockholder, they have differing required rates of return. So this K or discount rate reflects, in finance parlance, it's called cost of capital or weighted average cost of capital. So our projects, we're using other folks' money, and they want a rate of return, so our project then must provide a rate of return that meets the requirements of those investors. An NPV positive is good. It will return a rate of return of what K, greater than K if it's a positive NPV. So let's move. I think I have a calculation on the next page. And let's call this a investment in a production, automating a production process. Let's kind of put some meat to this. And I have the net present value calculation there, so we'll walk through this real quickly, and I will tell you that there is a quicker and easier way. Excel does have a function called NPV that will make hay of this calculation quickly versus this process that I'm about to take. All right, so required return. So the company requires a 14% rate of return on all capital investments. So the question is, we are looking at an automated process, and it costs, I have an initial outlay. Is my pen still on? We'll see. $28,000. So I've taken care of one of my inputs. All right, that one's an easy checkoff. All right. Next thing I have to do, I say, well, this automated process will produce cost savings over the life of the equipment in 5-year life. And over the 5-year life, we forecast that we will have cost savings of $8,000 in year 1, in year 2, 3, and 4, $10,000 in year 5, $12,000. So the question is, suppose this automated production process will support our strategy. The question is it financially viable? So we have the cash flows. What we need to do is to discount those cash flows. In other words, year 1 cash flow, at the end of year 1, we need to bring its value back to times 0. So we do that simply by, we can take that cash flow and divide it by 1 plus the discount rate, 14% raised to the number of periods that's in. We need to bring this back, and that's 1 period. So the present value of an $8,000 cash flow 1 period in the future is $7,018. You say, well, that's great and good. I prefer to look at it slightly different, and I ask myself the question, if I were this company, how much would I be willing to pay for $8,000 in the future? And the maximum I'd be willing to pay is $7,018. I would be willing to pay up to $7,018 to purchase this $8,000 cash flow in the future. At $7,018, it would grow at 14% to $8,000. If I could buy this cash flow for $6,500, I would do that. And we actually do that for each of the cash flows. Once we do that, then you say, okay, there's the summation. Then we add these present value of the cash flows, and we see that the present value is $33,615, which that is how much we would be willing to pay given a 14% rate of return for these future cash flows. Now, granted, they are estimated cash flows. They are not realized cash flow. We will look quickly here at when an estimated cash flow becomes a realized cash flow. So would you be willing to pay $28,000 for $33,000 in value? And I hope you say yes, because that means NPV is positive, so that we interpret that as the project is financially viable and will provide a rate of return that exceeds our discount rate of 14%. So this process of financial evaluation is very important. But you notice the project first must support our strategy. And then we move on to strategy implementation. Strategy implementation occurs through project management. And I have a quote here from Mr. Drucker: plans are only good intentions unless they immediately degenerate into hard work. Well, the hard work starts. We have a decision. We have a project. And I will sometimes say decisions have in and of themselves have no value. The value comes when they are implemented and then used in operations to produce value, produce actual results, profitability, and cash flow. Point here, strategy is implemented through projects. This is where we degenerate into hard work, as Mr. Drucker would ask us to do. How do we define project management? PMI, Project Management Institute, temporary endeavor undertaken to create a single unique product, service, or result. So in this case, given our example of the NPV example, we had a automated process that we're looking at. So project management would be responsible for taking that automated process and providing the deliverable and turning it over to operations so that they can use the process to reduce costs. Okay, so let's project characteristics include establish objectives. This is pretty standard stuff from basic project class. Define lifespan, involvement of several departments and professionals, typically doing something never done before. But the one that I actually would emphasize, specific time, cost, and performance requirements, because I'm looking at the process, the flow from strategic management to project management on to operations management, and project managers need to be cognizant of these time, cost, and performance requirements. A couple other comments from PMI, projects drive change. This is how we move from one state to another state. In other words, we have the strategic decisions are our steering, and now we are going to move toward our strategic goals or destination. And projects also enable business value creation. I will draw your eye down to the last line. Hopefully you can read this. Business value and projects refer to the benefit that the results of a project provide to stakeholders. And that benefit for a corporation comes in the form of dividends and stock prices. All right, so OM. Let's back to our example about an automated process. It meets the project selection criteria of supports our strategy, also is financially viable. We turn that over to our project managers. They do all the steps necessary to make it usable within the operations management area. And then operations uses the process to create goods and services. So definition of operations management, set of activities that create value in the form of goods and services by transforming inputs into outputs. I can't emphasize enough, you see that word again, create value. If we have one overriding goal, and that's for any and every employee of the organization, and that is value creation. We should make decisions that create value for the organization. Okay, so I've kind of put together just a little chart here, and it's nothing too sophisticated, but what I wanted to look at is to look at the net present value calculation and see how this formula flows through these three areas of management: strategic, project, and operations. So for strategic management, our output includes strategic decisions. What to do, what is the expected cost, what's the expected duration. Now, if you recall, project management has three objectives. That is cost, time, performance requirement. So this is handed off to project management to implement. And the inputs include, what are we going to do? What's our project deliverable? What is our performance requirements? What is our functional specification? What's the expected cost to get this automated process online, useful in OM? And how long is it going to take? So expected completion. Those are three very important things. So you'll notice when we pass the project on to project management for implementation, we have what? We have expected cost. I've called that the initial outlay. And we also have an expectation of when we OM can use the process to generate cost savings over upcoming periods. All right, from the project management area, our outputs become, well, we complete the project. So we have the project deliverable. It's another way of saying we realize the performance requirements. I like to think we can always do that, no deviations. and we had the actual expected cost and the actual duration. All right, and I'm just say, okay, we achieved both of those, all three objectives. So once we have completed this project, we hand it off to operations management. They have a new workstation that has an automated process that will save money. So their input is the completed project, which is the project deliverable. OM outputs become goods and services, which include actual cost, including those reduced costs due to the automated process, as well as actual units produced. And once we have these, then we have realized cash flow, as well as timing and quantity. When we calculated NPV, it was forward-looking, it was an estimate, but once turned over to OM, then we have actual cash flows, timing and quantity. Now, I'm going to go so far as to make the assumption that everything went precisely according to plan. And if that's the case, then the project, this strategic investment, would have a net present value. I'm going to have to back up to go find the amount of that again. I've been thinking correctly, of $5,615. So that's good. This decision has created value of $5,615. So there is a chance, as a matter of fact, it's most likely that something along this path will not go precisely as expected. It could be that we don't meet our project deliverables, we go over cost, we don't meet our expected completion time, but we still turn it over to OM and we give them a completed project, but it doesn't work as expected or as wanted, but they still use it for goods and services. They have actual cost, actual units produced, and then we still have the realized cash flow, and we find that it is possibly less than what was estimated, and we may actually have a destruction of value instead of a creation of value. So this path is very important. It needs to be tightly linked, cohesive, and well organized, or orchestrated, I think would be a better word. So what are some examples? All right. So I've talked a lot about how can we create value for our organization. It's another way of saying how can we create value for our common stockholders. So I went and I pulled some information, top 10 stocks of the past decade, which that's relatively long term, and that's okay. Best performing S&P stocks, 20, that's a longer time period. Now, when I looked at this, this is from the Russell 3000. Russell 3000 is the 3,000, let's call them largest US-based companies. Well, as I look down the list, I probably only recognize one or two of those, and one is Netflix. Everybody probably realizes Netflix and how they have affected the delivery of video streaming services. They have had explosive growth because the market potential is large, and they have leveraged their core competencies to produce results. So in this case, they had a total return over a 10-year period of 4,948%. So basically 50 times. So let's go to another one, because I like companies that I actually recognize. And as I look, this is over 20 years, and this is the S&P 500. So this is the 500 largest companies in the U.S. So you look down this list, and hopefully you can see this, but most of these are recognizable. And Monster Beverage, I assume they make one of those caffeine-laden drinks that I see folks buying at the stores. Apple Inc. We've already mentioned that Apple was the first U.S.-based company to reach a $1 trillion market capitalization. One that kind of surprised me, kind of Tractor Supply, not a real flashy company, but doing their business. Again, they have created a 20-year return of 15,619%. You'd be happy if you had invested $1,000 in Tractor Supply 20 years ago. And as I scroll down the list, Amazon's another that has made terrific strides as a disruptor in the retail industry, and it also is on the list. And you can kind of go down, look down the list, and as I look, back in, let's see, Amazon was the second U.S.-based company to achieve a $1 trillion market cap, and that was back in, looks like September 4th, 2018. Now, neither Amazon nor Apple has a $1 trillion market cap at this particular time. There have been some price declines there due to various reasons. I don't think it's anything that's strategically related, project management related, or operations management related. It's just a natural pullback in stock prices. Now, this particular chart, I'm going to flip over I guess I'm not going to flip over the next slide, but this is graph. Our price chart shows Walmart, all right, which incorporated, I think it was in 1969, and you can see the value that has been created over a period of time, not just looking at the total value for a specific period, but you can actually see the price movements that occurred in each period. And Walmart has been energized lately as they have taken a strategic approach to their online business, and that was one of the things that was reported recently. They had hopefully I'm not too far wrong, 43% increase in online sales, which year over year, that's pretty impressive. So other examples, well, you may have remember that every company, almost every company, I'm going to say every company uses some form of this approach: strategic management, project management, and operations. But that does not guarantee success. All right. When I'm defining success as price declines, and as I pulled this list, first thing I noticed was, gosh, there was a lot of retailers had difficulties last year. The retailing landscape has changed dramatically with the advent of Amazon and customer preference to do online shopping versus brick and mortar type shopping. So I'm going to go through these quickly. That one's out of sync. I'm sorry that Walmart provides some information. You'd been very happy if you'd invested in Walmart and held the stock until current time. So some S&P 500 companies, and this is for 20 years. So there are companies that have lost anywhere from, well, they had no gain over 20 years, and that is pretty dismal performance, all the way to losing 91% of their value over a 20-year period. So as you look down through here, some of these companies are recognizable. There's Xerox, there's Citigroup, Goodyear, Ford. Gosh, as I read through there, I recognize all of these as being nationally known U.S. companies, Newell Brands. Some of you may be familiar. General Electric. General Electric has had some issues with strategy, and you look them down the list. So process doesn't work. It's not guaranteed success. And we mentioned Sears filed for bankruptcy, Sports Authority closed all stores, liquidated retailers, Blockbuster. I saw a little blurb about some time when Netflix was about to, or was in its infancy. They talked with the Blockbuster management, and I think the Blockbuster management laughed at them and says it will never work. Well, it did work, and Blockbuster, well, they may still have some outlets, I'm not sure, but they declared bankruptcy. Here's one that probably most of you are not familiar with, and it comes from several years ago. Exxon, which is an integrated oil company, made an investment to get into the, it was called the office systems business. It was an investment in semiconductor production and products, and this was during a period, I guess, semiconductor chips was exploding in terms of application and uses, and Exxon, again, it was kind of misguided in a way because integrated oil companies don't strategically align with office systems. All right. One other, maybe another couple examples. I need to get this wrapped up just as soon as I can. Project management, important. How important it is to get projects finished on time. And some information from the textbook used in the project management class. Rule of thumb, 6-month delay in bringing a project to market can result in a loss of market share of about 35%. And it's kind of difficult to find examples, announcements, and of projects behind, but I did come across one. Gosh, I seem to be out of sync here. And that is, in this case, it is Electronic Arts. And this announcement was, it looks like around the end of August, they announced that there was a delay in their next version of Battlefield. All right, I don't know what that is. It's some kind of game. So what do you think happened? This was a significant delay. Share price went down. Well, I'm seeing one, I'm sorry, I'm seeing Electronic Arts, but I'm seeing something about, I'm just flipping through. Well, I'm going to have to go back and see if I can find that. My apologies. It is out of sync here. But anyway, there was a substantial decline in the share price. It's not this CMG right here. All right. There's a CMG, which is Chipotle Mexican Group, which actually I think I have that as examples of OM challenges. One is Chipotle Mexican Group. They had some foodborne illness issues, sick customers, and over a period of time they lost a substantial, over it looks like a 2-year period, they lost billions of dollars in market cap. Another one is Theranos downfall, which was a innovative company that had developed a process to test blood using only drops of blood instead of vials of blood. Lost $8 billion, went bankrupt because it's either the process didn't work or the ability to make tests didn't work. Takata, everyone's probably heard of the airbag manufacturer. It's a private company, so it is not publicly available information, so can't get the market price. Some new strategic initiatives in place. Pulled a couple of those. Buffalo Wild Wings is going into, possibly looking into going into the sports gambling business. Altria, maker of Philip Morris cigarettes, is looking at making or has made an investment in a marijuana producer. This is one in Canada, so I think if given legal restrictions, easements, we might be seeing cannabis cigarettes here manufactured by Altria. And another acquisition by Altria is an e-cigarette startup. One more, Heineken agrees to a 3.1, is entering China, world's largest market in terms of population. One last one is, this one indicates a shift in strategy, and it has to do with the announcement by Steve Ballmer, who was the CEO. They announced back August 2013 that he was retiring. You think, no big deal. Well, on that particular day after the announcement occurred, the stock price increased 7%, $2.36 a share. You say, well, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal because 7.68 billion shares outstanding translates into $18.12 billion. Market cap increased simply because of the CEO retirement announcement, which I'm interpreting that as there was going to be a change in strategic direction. And if you follow Microsoft, the new CEO, Nadella, has undertaking shifts into cloud computing as well as fee-priced fee-based software access, subscription-based. All right, so looks like from the announcement date through 31/2018, the market cap increased dramatically, and Microsoft now has a market cap of $780 billion. Actually, at this particular time, as of yesterday, the Microsoft market cap was larger than both Apple and Amazon. Okay. Key points. I'll make this fast. SM, PM, OM all play a critical role in value creation. Weak link can have potentially devastating effects. Project selection is critical to achieving strategic goals and objectives, as well as creating value for the organization. MPV provides an approach to value future cash flows associated with strategic alternatives and investment. Project NPVs will, over time, increase the value of the firm, consistent with the goal of maximizing shareholder wealth. All right. Now, that being said, I do have some closing items, but I think I probably overstayed my welcome, so I'm going to turn it back over to Mindy. And Mindy, I've got to apologize for taking so long.
No problem. Thank you, Leonard. So if anyone has questions for Leonard right now, you can go ahead and type those in the chat box that you'll see, kind of the little chat icon on the bottom right. And it looks like, Leonard, we do have a question from Jim Bergen, or a comment.
Jim always has great insight. I have a name for Jim. I call him Professor KPI. Okay. So I'm chuckling about that. Let's see. Jim had a comment. Once worked for a company that didn't provide sufficient review, okay, to back into the cash flow. That does create a problem, Jim. There's I guess, a very similar problem. If you have a project that it is desired or wanted by upper management, there might be a tendency to maybe justify or change the data that's input into, like, the financial evaluation until you can find a result that produces financial viability. That's actually a great point, great comment. Yeah, someone else is typing. I will mention, I noticed there was a couple here in my current class, and we were actually looking at the strategic implications, decisions associated with the new Little Rock scooter service. It's called Lime Scooters, and a couple of them have volunteered to ride those scooters after next class, and I hope to have a video. There you go. All right. You're exactly right. Those knobs are very important. They do determine, I like Dr. Chili's description. They steer, all right, and if we know our destination, we can adjust each of those knobs. And this is actually related, I didn't talk about it, and that is portfolio project selection, because What we find is when we have a portfolio, we don't want to have all of the same type of projects that have similar risk and payoff or return characteristics. That's a good point, Greg. Thank you. Well, I think with project portfolios, we may have some, typically they use 2 dimensions to do a kind of a relative classification. That is technological feasibility and payoff. And what you find is that companies sometimes have a tendency to have a large part of their project portfolios that fall in the low return, easy to do type projects. It's less risky, but the payoff is small. As Dr. Chili mentioned, or on his slide, he mentioned that the biggest payoffs, which may be the most difficult in terms of technology to accomplish, are things like a new product, a new innovative product. And you may think back, okay, that might be like an iPhone, Apple iPhone is maybe some of their other products.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. And if you do have questions, you can continue to type those there. We'll stay around for a couple more minutes, but we appreciate you attending our session. On your screen, you see the upcoming webinars. We've got 2 left, and the next one will be Wednesday, March 27th. And that one is about blockchain, and that will be presented by the Industrial Engineering Department Head, Dr. Ed Pohl. So again, the video from today's session will be posted to our website very soon. And that is all we have for today. Thank you for joining our session.